Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordies, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Lost Judgment for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series X and S. Now the thing about the original Judgment that a lot of people critiqued was the fact that it started very slowly, and that was understandable considering that Judgment presented a new protagonist in Yagami that was a former police officer turned detective. This also added some gameplay element changes like tailing characters and tried to avoid being spotted, and as well as fighting styles that were more toned down versions of what we've seen in the Yakuza games in the past, specifically because Yagami isn't the fighter that Kiryu Majima was in the Yakuza games. Yagami has three fighting styles. You have the crane style, which is more focused on evading and getting away from crowds of enemies. So for example, if you're surrounded by enemies, you can be able to twirl and twist and jump your way out of a situation, and that way you can get some distance and maybe land some attacks or switch to a more powerful style, which in this case would be the Tiger style. The Tiger style is more of like the brawler style from the Yakuza games, where Yagami can hit and then charge up his big finishing blows for damaging effects. Now the new style that he's been presented with is one of the more interesting ones, and that is the Snake style. The Snake style is based on counterattacks. It's based on avoiding, and one of the best things about this style is that if you hit the block button right when an opponent is about to hit Yagami, he will parry that attack, sweep behind the opponent, and can be able to land some more attacks. Personally, the Snake style right now has been one of my favorite things about his gameplay because of the ability to find that parry and that timing, that window of opportunity. Of course, you have your EX and big finishing maneuvers that are just synonymous with the Yakuza games, and in turn the Judgment games. You can also run away from battles, or if you're in the middle of a fight, you just decide to take the fight into this restaurant that's nearby. Now, while the actual gameplay in terms of the action doesn't feel that much different even with the implementation of the fighting style, the stealth mechanics definitely have been fleshed out. The real only thing you could do in the original Judgment was tailing enemies and not trying to be spotted. Whereas with this one you still have to do the same thing, but there are actual moments where you're in closed situations and you have to figure out a way how to sneak around an enemy or a guard or a cop. Some of those new ways to do this is by throwing a smoke bomb or a coin for distraction. Favorite things that I did not expect to be in this game is the ability to simply choke out an enemy if you want to after distracting them. From a narrative perspective thus far, unlike Judgment where they had to really take their time to establish the world and the characters that were involved in this new iteration of a Yakuza game per se, this game kind of goes a little bit faster in regards to what the goal is, and that is discovering a bullying epidemic that is going on at a local high school. This is complemented by a story that's going around the country where the dead body of a former student teacher has been found, and the person potentially responsible actually has an alibi as to why they're not responsible for killing this person. It's a very interesting dynamic to push forward the narrative of what Yagami can handle and what he can do as a detective. Of course, like any game in this franchise, in this series of Yakuza games, there's a lot to do between mini games, between offerings like arcade cabinets, and of course completion statuses that will definitely keep players who do love doing all of those things busy for a very long time. From a technical perspective, Lost Judgment is very similar to its predecessors. It flows well, it sounds good, the voice actors are great, the soundtrack of course is great, and from a technical aspect I haven't had any issues thus far, haven't had any hard crashes or weird bugs here and there, because usually these games don't really have those problems, and thankfully thus far Lost Judgment is another one of those games in this franchise that doesn't have any glaring issues that would make me think, you know what, they should have kept this in the oven for a little longer. Overall, if you enjoyed not only the previous Judgment game, but also the pre-Like a Dragon Yakuza games, the ones that didn't have the RPG battle system, this is a perfect experience for you yet again, because of course this is by the studio that's made the Yakuza games, and more than likely than not they will have some great experiences for you, be it from the story, be it the sub-stories, and of course the gameplay itself. If you've enjoyed those games in the past, definitely check it out. If you haven't played these games in the past, I would suggest you play the first game, play Judgment. You can get it really cheap now. They got the remastered version as well, so I would suggest you play that first before you pick this up. And that's a hefty game too, so you will have a lot of time to play these games to really get into the swing of it and understand if you really enjoy these type of games. If you didn't like Judgment, I don't really think you're gonna like Lost Judgment that much either, specifically because it's very similar to the previous game, just a lot more fleshed out. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions, Lost Judgment, for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S. Now if you don't mind, I have to teach this dance troupe how to really bring it by having Yagami implement some of his special maneuvers into their routine. And if the judges don't like the dance I'm giving them, they will have no choice but to say, "Oh Lordy."